Oh, well, she she entered the P66, I think, 65. Well, our end game is we should be able to get the nut.
Sounds, please. Thank you. Dear members of the Rotary Club of Makati, as we gather here today for our weekly luncheon meeting, let us take a moment to reflect on the importance of the club's mission to serve our community and make a positive impact in the world. Today, we are honored to have Justice Antonio T. Carpio, a distinguished former Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the Philippines, as our guest speaker. Justice Carpio will be sharing his insights on a topic that is of great significance to our nation and our people, the Philippine Island territories in the West Philippine Sea. As we listen to his words, let us open our hearts and minds to the issues at hand and consider how we can contribute to the betterment of our country. Let us remember the values of justice, integrity, and service that are at the core of the Rotary Club of Makati. Let us strive to make a difference in the lives of those around us and work towards a future where peace and prosperity reign. May this luncheon meeting be a time of inspiration, reflection, and unity. Let us come together as a community to support each other and our guest speaker in his endeavors to make a positive impact on our society. Thank you for being here today and for your dedication to the ideals of Rotary. Let us continue to strive for a better world, one where justice and compassion prevail. In God's name, we sincerely pray. Amen.
Let me continue to stand for the national anthem.
Witness a history in our lifetime as we bring back to life what a true Rotarian should be. Service above self, unity in diversity, and inclusivity, all for one and one for all. This is our chance. This is our time to rise up and be the example of what humanity can achieve. Together, let's create hope in the world. So let us sing with one voice the Philippine National Anthem.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas. Kayang mag-ibig, helas ng sinakalan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Upang hinirang, tuyag ka ng magiting, sa manlulupin, di ka pasisingil, sa nagagang tutok sa simoy at sa langit mo pagaw, ay hinatang tulakaw, sa pagkayang minamahal, ang isang ng matawad mo'y tagumpay na nag-iibig, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may di matidinig, lumanang araw ng walang pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Ang hindi kaya ng pagkay pag-amin, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Okay, for the Makati Rotary hymn.
We're the Rotary Club of Makati, and together we stand proud. We are leaders with integrity, always ready to serve humanity, always living by the four-way test, building goodwill and peace along the way, giving hope to the world. We're the Rotary Club of Makati, prepared to aid our fellow men. excel, and this is why we succeed. We're the Rotary Club of Makati, and together we stand proud. We are leaders with integrity, always ready to serve humanity, always living by the four-way test, building goodwill and peace along the way, giving hope to the world. We're the Rotary Club of Makati, giving hope to the world. The Rotary Club of Makati.
Okay, for the four-way test of the things we say and do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendship? Will it be beneficial for all concerned? And our answer is, parang gutom pa kayo eh. Our answer is, yan. Okay, you can take your seats. Okay, next in the program will be greetings and birthdays. Uy, my idol compañero, happy birthday, May 27, Boy Arteche. Uy, palakpakan nyo naman si Boy. Kayo talaga, oh. Manlilibre yan ng lechon baka sa 27. Palakpakan nyo kagad. Happy birthday. Eric Lee also, May 27. Wash Lu, 31 May. And PP Junjun Dairit, 1 June. Or June 1. Si June is also abroad, ano? For our Rotarians, Jane Tan, May 21. And Grace Lianyo, May 25. Wedding anniversaries, Tony and Irene Tan, May 28. And Johnny and Eleanor Tan, May 30. So congratulations to all of you. Happy birthday. And to give our birthday and anniversary song, I can see our vocalist tenor, Attorney Louie. Ka muna kumain dyan. Baka mabiliokan ka. Kanta muna tayo. Kanta ka muna. Katabi mo si the other soprano, Chito, beside you. Oh, si Chito, bigyan mo ng mic.
Can you send one microphone to David? We have to bring this.
And of course,
Yeah,
David Ackerman.
the still good-looking former president, not the formerly good-looking
Oh,
president.
not former. Baka
Sige,
Okay.
dahil ka naman si Tis.
the two good-looking presidents will sing, Louie and David. Yeah.
Okay, let's do this.
One, two, three. Wala si Marcy. It is your birthday, and let's celebrate this important day. We greet you, deep in our hearts. Happy birthday, and happy Happy birthday, boy.
Happy birthday, comrade.
Ayan, Comrade Boy Arteche. 69. Your favorite year. Happy birthday, Attorney Boy. And now we, of course, recognize our dignitaries and guests. Can start with, of course, past District Governor Tony Kila over there. Palakpakan naman natin our past District Governor. And of course, our lovely aunts. Lovely Antes, Ase Oche, next Governor. Pare, nasa akin yung mic eh. Ako na naman. Lagot na naman ako dito. O, lagot si Louie. Okay, Vicky Cantada over there. And Vicky. And Of course, again, we are hybrid, so sa Zoom, and Lou Limhoco. Okay, our guests here present, Rotaract Makati President Adrian Manuel, Rotaract Makati past President, immediate past President John Nicole de la Cruz, and then Rotaract Makati Glenda Artates. Okay. Of course, ano ba yan? As a Zoom. Also like to recognize Ann Ai and Ann Rose Galvez, the Rotarian Ai is also with him. Who else is there? Sino pa nandun? Yun na lang, si Rose. Hindi. Yeah. So Inigo's there. Chris is also online. Jose Martin Revita and Nico Dairit is also online. So also our guest here present, Miss Joy Uchoco from Isambayan and Makati Villages Council. Palakpakan natin. Ayan, very hardworking member and convener of Makati Villages. Shelo Legaspi, guest of course, Sunny Tambunting Jr. Our next, dapat ito Anshelo na di ba? And then Andy Ibarra, guest of PP Eddie, P and Eddie. Teddy Montalibono, of course, from the Daily Tribune. Let's give him a big hand. Okay, I hope we recognized everybody. And I see Al Mayoralgo over there. Welcome. Another guest from Isambayan and Makati Villages. So, of course, later on, we will properly introduce to you our guest speaker, Justice Tony, who I learned is also a Makati Rotarian. Hindi, wag na natin sabihin kung kailan. So, since Justice, everybody's asking, since you were a Makati Rotarian, never, even if you reside, you were never out of Makati Rotary, so it's always time to go back. O, di ba? Palakpakan naman natin. But of course, we will properly introduce you later, di ba? So now, we'll have club function and committee announcement. Any announcements from our group or any club functions? Keith? President Keith, President-elect Keith.
Quick, no sound. A quick reminder, a call. Want to talk. All this evening at 8 o'clock to discuss the schedule of the activities when we are in Singapore. So this is for those people who are going to the RI convention in Singapore, which this weekend doesn't want to talk until, so fine. Just a reminder. Go to the Zoom call at 8 o'clock.
Okay, 8 o'clock, those going to the RI convention in Singapore. And those that doesn't have a ticket yet to Singapore, Winston will give you a plane ride in his plane from Manila to Singapore. Kaya ba ng eroplano mo yan, Winston? How many stops will it make? We will have to stop in Scarborough or Spratly going to Singapore. Okay, so now we'll have the President's time. Welcome back, President Bing.
Thank you very much, Howie, and thank you for holding the fort. And it's really good to be back. I arrived last night. It's a long flight, but it was I was missing all you guys. I was watching you guys on Zoom, and of course, I was not missing Boy Artecha's posts. Anyway, it's good to be back in Manila, and what a perfect time to return. Today, I have the pleasure of presiding over a very interesting and timely talk about the West Philippine Sea by none other than our former member. We tried to ask him to consider rejoining us. Former Associate Justice Antonio Carpio. Thank you, Justice Carpio, for agreeing to our invitation and sharing your valuable knowledge with us. I would also like to extend my sincere thanks to VP Howie Calleja for presiding over the two meetings. I missed your dedication and leadership ensured that everything ran smoothly in my absence. Additionally, thank you for sharing the cost of lunch during the district conference to preserve our cherished club tradition. Your generosity and commitment to our club are greatly appreciated, and I owe you a special thanks and also a lunch. Over the weekend, the incoming board for the next Rotary year, headed by, of course, PE. Keith, where is he? Keith, thank you again, Keith, for organizing that. And I'm sorry I missed that. It was, I understand, a two-night planning session, and judging from the pictures that I saw, it was a real great get-together. I would like to extend my thanks as well to, of course, the better half of Keith, Rachel Harrison, for graciously hosting the team at Zambawood and for organizing two get-togethers, two dinners, I think, right? From what I've heard and seen in the photos, everyone had a fantastic time, and it truly seemed like a blast. Well, with the planning session now behind us, I'm more confident than ever that the new Rotary year will be another period of exceptional service and fellowship. Let's rally together to support the leadership of the incoming board and continue our mission of making a positive impact in our communities. And last Tuesday, RC Makati partnered with Waves for Water to provide 210 units of MVP filters, ensuring clean water access for over 1,000 households in 4 barangays. In Presentacion, Camarines Sur, Barangay Bantugan, Bitaogan, Bulalakaw, and Lidong. This vital project was done in coordination with the Management Association of the Philippines in support of their campaign against malnutrition. Again, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to the power couples, P. Keith and Rachel, and Director Bom and Ami Villatuya, who flew all the way to Bicol and traveled several more hours to represent our club in the distribution efforts. Well, we're just a month away from concluding another successful year for RC Makati, and we hope to finish strong with your active participation in our upcoming club activities. From May 25 to May 30, a 22-man delegation will be attending the RI convention in Singapore, notwithstanding the current COVID scare in Singapore. It's not too late to book your flight and join us on this trip. Experience Rotary International and bond with fellow Rotarians from beyond the Philippines, from beyond our shores. On June 1, we will be deploying 60 more reef buds at our Narvacan site in Ilocos Sur. We hope you can join us for this important environmental project. On June 4, the Makati Rotary Club Foundation Inc. annual members meeting will take place, where we will be electing new trustees to serve for 2 years. Your presence is vital as we need to meet the required quorum for this important meeting. And then on June 19, we will host our club awards, the last club-wide social event of the Rotary year, where we will recognize members who have made significant contributions to the club. We look forward to celebrating our collective achievements together. And finally, on June 20, we will hold a sustainability forum titled Unwrapping Change, Transforming the Philippines from its Plastic Legacy through EPR. This event was facilitated and organized by Chris Pereresa. It promises to be an informative session, and we encourage you to invite your friends and office staff to participate. Again, let us come together to end this Rotary year on a high note. Your encouragement and support make all the difference. Maraming salamat.
Thank you, President Bing. Just another reminder, on the 24th, we have the golf tournament. So President Bing will lead us in Forest Hills. So let's all be there 6 o'clock or 6:30 so we can try and practice early, Keith, in the driving range. Do we have shirts? I think past Governor Peps should be bringing those shirts. So let's see. Eddie has also an announcement. You will play golf with us or you will join
sorry, I
us on
forgot,
the
Bill.
19th.
On June 24, we're gonna bless our dorm in Puerto Princesa. Okay, in the Palawan State University. So you're welcome to come. In Puerto Princesa.
Of Puerto Princesa, that's June 24. But May 24 is our golf. June 24 is Puerto Princesa. I think we should, PN Eddie, we should book our flights early because we might run out of tickets going to Puerto. And then might be a good idea to spend the night over at Puerto. Or again, if there's lack of planes, again, I'll volunteer Winston's plane again. Can your plane reach Puerto Princesa? Easily. Okay. One seat ready. Reserved for me. Socials organized by me and paid by President Bing on the night in Puerto Princesa. With the legal assistance of Boy Arteche. Okay, so having said that, let's call, of course, our very own Boy Arteche to introduce our speaker for this afternoon.
Buenas tardes a todos. Maayong hapon kaninyong tanan. Our guest speaker was born in Davao City. Justice Antonio Carpio was sworn in as member of the Supreme Court of the Philippines on October 26, 2001. He served in the Supreme Court for 18 años, retiring October 25, 2019 upon reaching the compulsory retirement age of 70. Justice Carpio retired with a zero backlog of cases. Justice Carpio obtained his law degree from one of the best universities in the Philippines, University of the Philippines College of Law, where he also graduated class valedictorian cum laude in 1975. He earned his undergraduate degree in economics in the best school in the Philippines, Ateneo de Manila, in 1970. Fresh out of law school, Justice Carpio went into private practice and founded the Carpio, Villarasa, and Cruz law firm. He was a professional lecturer of the UP College of Law from 1983 until 1992, when he was appointed Chief Presidential Legal Counsel with Cabinet rank, Office of the President of the Philippines. For his distinguished and exemplary service to the Republic, Justice Carpio was awarded in 1998 the Presidential Medal of Merit by then President Fidel Valdez Ramos. He was conferred a Doctor of Laws, honoris causa, by the best university, Ateneo de Davao, in 2009, by the University of the Philippines in 2020, and again, the best university, Ateneo de Manila University, in 2021. On October 29, 2011, as guest speaker at the 50th founding anniversary of Ateneo de Davao College of Law, Justice Carpio launched his advocacy to challenge the validity of China's imaginary 9-dash line before a tribunal under the United Nations Conference of the Law of the Sea. Ever since, Justice Carpio has been giving lectures all over the country on the invalidity of China's 9-dash line. In 2015, the Department of Foreign Affairs sponsored Justice Carpio on a world lecture tour in the West Philippine Sea dispute. Justice Carpio presented the Philippines' perspective on the dispute before think tanks and universities in 30 cities covering 17 countries. In May 2017, Justice Carpio published the book titled The South China Sea Dispute, Philippine Sovereign Rights and Jurisdiction in the West Philippine Sea. While in the Supreme Court, Justice Carpio served as chair of the Second Division of the Supreme Court and chair of the Senate Electoral Tribunal. My friends and my brother Rotarians, the real hero of Davao City, real hero, I repeat, and the defender of the West Philippine Sea, Senior Associate Justice Antonio T. Carpio.
Thank you. Thank you for that very kind introduction. Thank you for inviting me to discuss with you this afternoon our island territories in the West Philippine Sea. The question that is presented in this presentation is what are the islands in the West Philippine Sea that are part of Philippine territory under Philippine sovereignty? If you look at the map, you will see Bajo de Masinloc or Scarborough Shoal. It is outside the Treaty of Paris lines. And you will see also the Spratlys or what we call the Calayan Island Group. Everything within these polygonal lines. We claim all those islands within the polygonal lines. But if you notice, the islands are outside the Treaty of Paris lines. They are outside the Treaty of Paris lines. So why do we say they are part of Philippine territory? Now, I call this the greatest misconception in Philippine history because we have some public intellectuals who keep on saying that Philippine territory is limited to the islands within the 1898 Treaty of Paris between Spain and the US. This is actually false, factually, legally, and historically false. And this has misled many people and other among Filipinos as well as people abroad as to the true extent of Philippine territory. So that's the map that you always see. If you go to the internet, Scarborough Shoal is outside the Treaty of Paris lines. The Spratlys are outside the Treaty of Paris lines. So this misconception came about because our own legal luminaries have stated that Scarborough Shoal and the Spratlys are not part of Philippine territory. This is statement from the article of former Solicitor General Estelito Mendoza, published in the Philippine Judicial Journal. That's the publication of the Philippine Judicial Academy under the Supreme Court. And he said, it must be remembered that the Calayan Island Group came to be part of the Philippines only on June 11, 1978, when PD 5096 was enacted. It has never, through the centuries of its existence, been regarded as part of Philippine archipelago. So this has really misled many people, including the Chinese. Now you have also Father Bernas. In 2012, he wrote a column in Inquirer. He said, we are claiming land areas that are outside the lines drawn by the Treaty of Paris. The challenge for us is to justify such claim not under the Treaty of Paris or under any treaty, but under the present state of international law. So here is another instance where a legal luminary has said that the islands in the Spratlys that we claim have not been transferred to the Philippines by treaty. So we have to look for some justification under international law. And finally, just in 2021, uh, s- s- uh, Senator Enrile, he's now the Chief Presidential Legal Counsel of President Marcos Jr., he said, alam mo, yung Scarborough, hindi sa atin yon. Squatter lang tayo doon. It's outside the Treaty of Paris. So that has been the narrative. And because of that, the Chinese said, Foreign Minister Wang Yi, when he spoke in CSIS in Washington, D.C., that's the leading think tank in Washington, D.C., and before all diplomats from all over the world, he said, there are three treaties that stipulate Philippine territory, the 1898 Treaty of Paris, the 1900 Treaty of Washington, and the 1930 treaty with the British demarcating our southern boundary. Areas in the west of the 118 degrees longitude do not belong to the Philippines. Nansha, that's the Spratlys, Wangan Island, that's Scarborough Shore, are all in the west of 118 degrees longitude. So this is 118 degrees longitude. So he said, oh, look at that. Scarborough is shown is outside, the Spratlys are outside. Therefore, these are not territories of the Philippines. This is a misconception, and it's time to lay to rest this misconception because it's dividing our country, misleading everybody abroad. So let's start with the 1935 Constitution, Article 1 on territory. It says the Philippines territory refer to the territory ceded to the US by the Treaty of Paris. That's 1898. Second, together with all the islands embraced in the Treaty of Washington, that's the 1900. So here, when you read the phrase, together with all the islands embraced in the treaty concluded at Washington, you have an idea that Philippine territory is not limited to the islands within the Paris Treaty lines. There are other territories, and these are the territories embraced in the 1900 Treaty of Washington, plus, of course, the 1930 treaty with the British, demarcating our southern boundary between southern Philippines and British North Borneo. That's in the Constitution. And this is correct. So we drill down a little bit. What does the 1898 Treaty of Paris say? It says the U.S., Spain ceded to the U.S. the archipelago known as the Philippine Islands. So what was ceded were the archipelago known as the Philippine Islands, lying within the following line of the Treaty of Paris. So archipelago of the Philippine Island within those Paris Treaty lines, limited. But then there was a second treaty because actually Philippine archipelago is not limited to the islands within the treaty lines. So a second treaty had to be made. And that is the Treaty of Washington. And it says the cession of 1898 included any and all islands belonging to the Philippine archipelago lying outside the lines of the Treaty of Paris. So Philippine territory is not limited only to the islands within the treaty lines. It includes other islands belonging to the Philippine archipelago lying outside the lines. So that's very clear. So, but we have forgotten about the Treaty of Washington. This treaty is not taught to our students. Our lawyers are taught only the Treaty of Paris, but they have forgotten about the Treaty of Washington. And that's why we have this problem now. The Chinese believe that Philippine territory is limited to the treaty lines because we have not explained it properly to the world. So the question now is, what are the islands of the Philippine archipelago lying outside the lines of the Treaty of Paris? Where do we see that document? Where do we find that map that these are the islands of the Philippine archipelago lying outside the lines of the Treaty of Paris? So the term Philippine archipelago actually must be interpreted as it was used in those three treaties, because archipelago now has a technical meaning under UNCLOS, but that is not applicable because under the doctrine of intertemporal law, the rights under the treaty must be evaluated in the light of the law contemporary with the treaty, not with reference to the law in force the time the dispute arose or the time the dispute was resolved. So islands of the Philippine archipelago or Philippine archipelago must be understood as it was meant to be by the parties to those three treaties. Now, as a background, we have two disputes in the West Philippine Sea. We have the maritime dispute, we have the territorial dispute. The maritime dispute has been resolved legally with finality by the July 12, 2016 arbitral award. Even if China does not recognize that, that is final and binding under international law. So legally, that has been resolved. We have a full exclusive economic zone in the West Philippine Sea. But the territorial dispute remains because UNCLOS only regulates maritime issues. Like, do you have an extended continental shelf? Do you have a exclusive economic zone? But who owns a particular island that is above water at high tide? That's a territorial dispute. That was not resolved by the UNCLOS tribunal because UNCLOS only regulates maritime areas. So as of now, Malaysia, Brunei, Indonesia, Vietnam recognize our exclusive economic zone in the West Philippine Sea. Only China does not recognize. The rest of the world also recognize our exclusive economic zone. The territorial dispute remains because there is no tribunal, international tribunal that has compulsory jurisdiction. An international tribunal can acquire jurisdiction over a territorial dispute if all of the parties involved voluntarily submit the dispute to arbitration. China refuses to submit the dispute to arbitration. We are, of course, we'll be happy to submit it to arbitration because we have the strongest title. In any territorial dispute, the starting point is a critical date. Why is that? Because the policy of international law is to prevent a dispute from escalating, to prevent the dispute from worsening, from aggravating. So the rule is once there is a critical date, and that critical date means one state claims an island, another state claims the same island. At that point, that is the critical date. Anything that the states do to enhance their title, like they will bring their population to live in the island, they will create, they will establish air and naval bases in the island, they will bring troops, will not matter because that will aggravate the dispute. Policy of the international law is once there is a critical date, from that critical date onwards, whatever you do to improve your title will be disregarded by international law. So in the Spratlys and the Scarborough Shoal, what is the critical date? We go back to the timeline, 1734. Spain, on behalf of the Philippines, claimed the Spratlys and Scarborough Shoal as part of Philippine territory. It's there in that map. In 1808, it was reiterated in another map. 1875, reiterated in another map. No other country claimed the Spratlys or Scarborough Shoal until 1933. In 1933, France officially claimed the Spratlys as part of the French Union, not on behalf of Vietnam or any of its colonies in Indochina. And there is a difference. If you are a territory of France, part of the French Union, all those born there in that island, that territory, are French citizens from birth, and they can vote in all French elections. That's the meaning of an island that is part of the French Union. So you may be in the South Pacific, If you are a French Union territory, then all the people there are French citizens. But France did not claim the Spratlys on behalf of Vietnam. It claimed it for itself. But France abandoned its claim after World War II. 1939, Japan's Spratlys put up a submarine base in Itoaba, and Japan used that submarine base to invade the Philippines. But after World War II, Japan was, of course, defeated. Japan renounced its claim to the Spratlys. In 1947, China claimed the Spratlys for the first time in its history. But at the same time, China said, we're claiming the Spratlys, but the Spratlys are also claimed by the Philippines and by the French in Indochina. So it's only in 1947 that there is now a critical date. The Philippines claimed it as admitted by China, and China claimed it also. 1947 is the critical date. Also with Scarborough Shoal, because in the 9-dash line map of China in 1947, they claimed Scarborough Shoal. Although they did not give a name to Scarborough Shoal, they claimed it. So the critical date is 1947. Anything you do after 1947 has no legal value. It will not improve your claim. Okay. So we have already the critical date. The 3 treaties that I mentioned that's cited in the Philippine Constitution of 1935 are very important. Why? Because of this principle, ut possidetis juris. Roughly translates from Latin to English, it means as you possess under the law, stay there. This is a very strong doctrine under international law. If you look at the map of Africa, you will see that the boundaries are drawn very straight. Also in Latin America. So the same tribe may be living on both sides of the boundary. So part of the tribe belongs to one state, another part of the tribe, the same tribe belongs to another state. And there will of course be perpetual border wars if you allow them to gobble up the other part of the tribe. So the international law developed this principle, ut possidetis juris. Those boundaries established by the colonial powers for their colonies are sacrosanct. They cannot be changed. They must be respected by all states to preserve peace and stability. And this doctrine of international law applies to Africa, Latin America, and elsewhere in the world, including Asia and Southeast Asia. So this principle applies to the 3 treaties. It's a very strong principle. So the 3 treaties that define our territory were established by the colonial powers. The 1898 Treaty of Paris was established by Spain and the US. The Treaty of Washington of 1900 was established by Spain and the US. And the third Treaty of 1930 was established by US and the United Kingdom. They all defined Philippine territory. This is very important because all countries must respect these boundaries established by the colonial powers. Now, so what are the islands of the Philippine archipelago that are protected under this ut possidetis juris principle? What are the islands of the Philippine archipelago? Where do we find that document? We start with the 1734 Murillo-Velarde map. You will see there that Scarborough Shoal is part of Philippine territory. It was given a name, Panakot, Tagalog word. And you will see that the Spratlys are part of Philippine territory. It was given a name, Los Baos de Paragua. Paragua is the old Spanish name of Palawan. Los Baos means the shoals of Palawan. These are the Spratlys. So in 1734, Spain already included this as part of Philippine territory. And this map was circulated all over the world. So if you look at the cartouche of the map on the right side upper, that's the symbol of the crown of Spain. If you see that symbol, that means it's an official map of that place. And that's why this 1734 Murillo-Velarde map is the first map showing Philippine sovereignty. First official map, Spanish map, made during the Spanish regime. And in 1792, Alessandro Malaspina came here. Alessandro Malaspina was the head of the Spanish expedition that went around the world to visit the Spanish possessions, collecting specimens of flora and fauna, and to chart the Spanish waters. And this is the plummet. And Malaspina went to Scarborough Shoal because Scarborough Shoal became famous already in 1792 because in 1748, a British tea clipper ship named Scarborough ran aground, hit the rocks of Scarborough and ran aground. That's why European cartographers called the shoal Scarborough Shoal. So Malaspina went there because it's a very important shoal, and he conducted the first hydrographic survey. He dropped, this is a plummet, made of lead, attached to a thin rope. He dropped it and measured the depth of every space there so that it will guide navigators to avoid the rocks. So you will not be like Scarborough that hit the rocks. So this is the first hydrographic survey of Scarborough Shoal. China didn't even know that there was such a shoal in 1792, but we already studied that shoal. We already made depth soundings on that shoal. In 1808, Spain already had an office called the Dirección Hidrografía. That's equivalent to our NAMRIA. They are the charting. At the time, maps were called charts. That's the mapping agency of Spain. And this is the 1808 Carta General, general map of the Philippine archipelago. And it shows here Scarborough Shoal with depth soundings. The hydrographic survey made by Malaspina was inserted there. Why was it inserted there? If you look at the rest of this map, there's a second part I will show you later. There are no depth soundings. Only Scarborough Shoal has a depth sounding. Why? Because the director of this Dirección Hidrografía, Joseph Espinosa, was one of the officers of Malaspina. When Malaspina arrived in Manila, one of his officers who accompanied him to Scarborough Shoal was Joseph Espinosa. And so when Joseph Espinosa became head of this mapping agency, he inserted the survey. If you look at the entire map, there are no hydrographic surveys here, only in Scarborough Shoal. So this map already shows many of the islands of the Spratlys as part of Philippine territory, but not yet complete, because at that time they were still going at the islands. They were trying to conduct depth soundings on those islands. So finally, we come to the 1875 Carta General del Archipelago Philippines. I call this the Holy Grail of Philippine map. Why? Because this is the complete map of Philippine territory. To answer the question, what are the islands of the Philippine archipelago seated under the Treaty of Washington? This is the answer. The islands in this map. And this is an official map of Philippine territory, the last official map of Philippine territory during the Spanish regime. And you will see here the entire Spratlys, complete. Scarborough Shoal is there. This is the definitive map. Unfortunately, we don't have a copy of this map. Not one of our public libraries or museums has a copy of this map. I asked from our private collectors, they don't have a copy. Those I asked, so we're trying to hunt for a copy of this map, because it's like you have a house, but you don't have a copy of the Torrens title. This is the Torrens title of the Philippine archipelago, because all the islands of the Philippine archipelago are here. And it includes Scarborough Shoal and the Spratlys. You can get, I downloaded a high-resolution copy of this map from the Ministry of Defense of Spain. You can download the high-resolution copy for free. You can go there to their website, and there is an explanation of who made this map. Okay, when the Americans came here after signing the Treaty of Paris, Of course, they did not have a copy of the Philippines. They did not have a map of the Philippines. They adopted the 1875 map as the map of the Philippines. So you will see here, War Adjutants, War Department, Adjutant General's Office, 1901, third edition, because the Americans published this in 4 editions. So the Americans adopted the last official Spanish map of the Philippines as their own map of the Philippines. So the 2 colonial powers that ruled the Philippines adopted this map as a map of Philippine territory. The entire Philippine archipelago is here. So the US government from 1898 to 1902 published 4 editions, and they just copied everything, but they superimposed the military telegraph lines, the military cable lines, eastern cable lines, and the military departments. So if you look at the 1875 map, you will see T2. This is the boundary of Philippine territory. And you see Tito. Tito is Pag-asa, Pag-asa Island. Tito is the international name. You will see here Loita. Loita is the international name for Kota. We call it Kota. We also possess that. We are in possession of Tito. We are in possession of Kota. Kota is about 14 hectares. Pag-asa is about 37 hectares. And you will see here Ituaba, the largest island. That's under the possession of Taiwan. It's about 45, 46 hectares in area. So you will see here in this map that Philippine territory ended there. It included the entire Spratlys as part of Philippine territory, officially. So if you look at the Scarborough Shoal in 3 maps, you have to the left the map of 1734 of Murillo Velarde. It includes Panacot. And the 1808 Carta General, it includes now with the depth soundings, Scarborough Shoal, and 1875, it's there. China doesn't have this kind of map. They never have until 1947. 1947, only when Scarborough Shoal appeared in the 9-dash line map of China. So if you go to the Calayan Island Group, this is PD 1596, and it has polygonal lines. Everything within the lines are claimed by the Philippines, all high tide features. So if you compare it, Pag-asa is here, that's Tito Island. Kota is here, that's Loita, and Ligao is here, that's Ituaba. So more or less it follows. And this is the edge of our territory under the current maps of the Philippines. This is the edge, exactly the same. If you go to, this is a map of Vietnam. They also the polygonal lines of PD 1596. And if you compare it, this is Tito. Tito is here. This is Loita. Loita is here, and Ituaba is here. Ituaba is there. So it's the same. Now that is the Spratlys under the 1875 map. It's there, and there are depth soundings. In other words, the Spaniards went there in each island and conducted depth soundings. It has names. All the names are there also. Now, after signing the Treaty of Paris, of course, the treaty had to be ratified by the US Senate after it was signed. And the president of the US sent the treaty together with this map. This was the map of the Treaty of Paris. The Treaty of Paris had a map attached to it. Very few people know that. And if you look at this map, it shows here the treaty, and it turns left, sharply to the left to include all the Spratlys, included everything, the Turtle Island, the Mapon Island, Cagayan de Sulu, and Cebuto. So in the 1898 Treaty of Paris, Spain ceded to the US the Spratlys, but there was a problem. Okay, in the map, the US Senate said, okay, we ratified the treaty. So Spratlys are included clearly here. But so the treaty was signed When it was signed, the US paid $20 million. What was ceded were islands comprehending the islands within the lines. Those are the lines. So what were ceded were the islands within the lines for $20 million. Now, however, the treaty had the fixed coordinates of the lines, geographical coordinates, longitude, latitude. And if you draw the lines based on the text of the treaty, this is what you will get. It didn't turn sharply to the left. It turned slanted to the left and then turned to the right, excluding Sibuto, Cagayan de Sulu, excluding the Spratlys. So there was a problem. So when the Americans arrived here, they found out that the Spanish garrisons in Cagayan de Sulu and Sibuto refused to vacate. They said, we are not part of the session of the Treaty of Paris because we're outside the lines. So they refused to move. They said, we are not part of the Treaty of Paris session. So the Americans had to talk again to the Spaniards. And the Secretary of State of the US wrote a letter to the Spanish ambassador in Washington and said, our intention was for Spain to transfer all its sovereignty in all the islands of the Philippine archipelago. So Spain should clarify that. And the Spaniards answered, you Americans dictated to us that the coordinates, we cannot say no, we just copied the coordinates we just agreed to the coordinates that you dictated to us. So it is clear what is outside the coordinates was not ceded to the US. We still retain that. So there was a really acrimonious exchange of notes. But finally, the Americans said, okay, we'll just pay you 50,000 more to clarify that everything, all the islands of the Philippine archipelago were also ceded. The Spaniards said, no, that's too little. So the Americans doubled it. How about $100,000? The Spaniards said, go, agreed. So the treaty was signed, and the Spanish ambassador in Washington said, he was reporting to his minister in Madrid, he said, there is only one article in the Treaty of Washington drawn in such a manner as to comprehend other islands outside the limits of the Treaty of Paris. There is only one article in the Treaty of Washington. It includes all other islands of the Philippine archipelago outside the Treaty of Paris. So that this is now the wording of the treaty. Any and all islands belonging to the Philippine archipelago lying outside the lines of the treaty are also ceded. So it's very clear that it's not only the three islands within the treaty lines. All other islands outside the treaty lines have also been included. And if you see the wording here, such islands shall be comprehended in the cession of the archipelago as fully as if they had been expressly included within those lines. As fully as if they had been expressly included within the lines of the Treaty of Paris. So the question is, what are the islands of the Philippine archipelago lying outside the treaty lines? You go to the map of 1875. Of course, you trace it from the 1734 map, the 1808 map, and finally to the 1875 map. This map, 1875, was, as I said, reissued by the Americans 4 times. You see, the Treaty of Paris was signed December 10, 1898. Before the end of that year, within 20 days, the US issued its first edition of the 1875 map. Just a few days after the signing, they already knew, because during the war, they studied the map. So they issued it. This is the map of the Philippines, 1898, just a few days after signing the Treaty of Paris. Before the signing of the Treaty of Washington, they issued another edition. And after the signing, they issued another edition. And finally, in 1902, they issued the last edition. So this is a very famous map among the Americans. But we all forgot about this. We forgot our history. So we only talk of the Treaty of Paris. But this is the more important treaty for purposes of the West Philippine Sea dispute. Now, so that old map is the Holy Grail. This will be our strongest evidence that the Spratlys and Scarborough Shoal are part of the Philippines. Unfortunately, we don't have a copy of this map. So I'm looking for this because I was able to, I checked with 2 auction houses online and they once offered it for sale, but it was sold already. But now and then there's a seller that comes along. So you have to be on the lookout all the time. Now, what else can we say that this map is really the map of Philippine territory under the American regime? There was an Island of Palmas case in 1928. Islas Palmas is an island very near Sarangani in Mindanao. It appears in the map of 1875. The Spaniards discovered it, but the Dutch in Indonesia administered it. They went there. There were about 700 people living there, and the island, the chief of the dato of that island signed a treaty with the Dutch, acknowledging Dutch sovereignty. So when the American Governor General went there, he saw the Dutch flag flying. So he questioned, and so there was a dispute between the US and Netherlands over who was sovereignty over Islas Palmas. It was submitted to an arbiter. This is a very famous case in international law, Island of Palmas case. And I surmise that there must have been a map submitted by the US in that case, but I couldn't find it in any book until I asked Professor Batong Bakal of UP. I said, Jay, I cannot find a copy of the memorandum of the US because I'm sure they used the 1875 map. He said, I have the memorandum. I went there to the National Archives at Maryland. I took a picture and it's here. So he gave me pages 42 to 43 of that memorandum submitted. The US said, this exhibit, the map, is both an American official map and a Spanish official map. So there you are. It's an official map of Philippine territory. So if you look at the southern tip of Mindanao, you have Sarangani there, and there is Islas Palmas. It's part of Philippine territory under the 1875 Carta General. But the arbiter said that discovery is just an inchoate title. You have to exercise continuous and peaceful display of sovereignty to perfect your title. And it is the Dutch that perfected it. So we lost Islas Palmas in that case. But the arbiter gave us something. He said, this ruling applies because Islas Palmas is inhabited. It will be different if it is uninhabited. Because if it is uninhabited, you cannot go there and ask the turtles and the crabs to sign a treaty with you. Nobody will sign a treaty with you. So he said, this applies only if the island is inhabited. So we come to the next case. 3 years later, there is a 1931 Clipperton Island case. Spain claimed Clipperton Island in 1858. A Spanish naval officer read a proclamation, went there to the island, read the proclamation, claimed France is claiming this as part of the French Union. And shortly after that, the officer went to Hawaii, the nearest island with the government, and published a 2-by-2-inch advertisement that today France claimed Clipperton Island. For 39 years, France never returned. France went there only once to claim it and never returned until Mexico claimed the island. So it was submitted to arbitration, and the arbiter said, the fact that it was completely uninhabited, in other words, you cannot go there and get inhabitants, there are no inhabitants, you cannot get the crabs and the turtles to sign a treaty with you. The fact that it was completely uninhabited, from the moment it was discovered, it be an absolute property of that state. And therefore, the title is complete because the island is uninhabited. You don't have to show peaceful and continuous display of sovereignty because the island is not inhabited. Very important. This was reiterated in the Eastern Greenland case. Denmark claimed Greenland, but did not inhabit the eastern part because it's very cold. You cannot live there. Denmark only established colonies on the warmer areas. Then in early 1930s, Norway claimed the eastern part, the uninhabited part. So it was submitted to arbitration. And the court said, the Permanent Court of International Justice said, when Denmark claimed it in the 1700s, there were no other claimants. And the eastern part is inaccessible. You cannot live there. Therefore, the title of Denmark became complete even on the uninhabited portion because you're not required to do the impossible. Under the law, you're not required to do the impossible. It's impossible to colonize the eastern part. It's just very cold. So the court said, international court said, the Denmark's title covers the entire area, even if they did not inhabit the uninhabited portion. So that's another case which says if it is uninhabited, you're not required to inhabit it. So we go to the Spratlys. Spain claimed it in 1734, reiterated it in 1808, and then in 1875. As of 1875, no other country claimed it. It was only in 1933 that the French claimed it. So when Spain included it in the 1734 map, the title of Spain became complete because it was uninhabited. And in fact, the tribunal of July 12, that issued the award of July 12, 2016, says the Spratlys, there is no historical record of any human habitation in the Spratlys. That means it's not inhabited. And because there is no water there, there is water if it rains. After the rain, there's no more water. It is not inhabitable. So what is the meaning of this? From the time Spain claimed it in 1734, the title of Spain became complete if you follow the earlier rulings. So there we really have to have this narrative. Now in 1938, the Philippines was run by the Commonwealth government. Those are all Filipinos, and they were very far-sighted. The government at the time said somebody might claim, some state might claim the Scarborough Shoal. We have to put a lighthouse there. So to mark that as Philippine territory. But they said, is that really part of Philippine territory? So they wrote Secretary Colonel Hull of the State Department of the US. Is Scarborough Shoal part of Philippine territory? Because we plan to put up a lighthouse there as a marker for other countries to know that that is part of Philippine territory. And the reply was this: because of the absence of other claims, the shoal should be regarded as included among the islands ceded to the US by Spain in the Treaty of 1900 of Washington. There you are. America, US acknowledged that Scarborough Shoal is part of Philippine territory way back in 1938. That is a statement of the Secretary of State. That's the foreign minister. That's binding on the US. But we have forgotten about this. That's why when the US vacillated that Scarborough Shoal might be a disputed territory, I said, no, you already recognize that as part of Philippine territory way back in 1938. And no other claimant state because of the absence of other claims. Because China claimed it only in 1947 in the 9-line map. So this is the first application of the Treaty of Washington. Because Secretary Colonel said, based on the Treaty of Washington of 1900, Scarborough Shoal is part of Philippine territory. So how do we now depict Philippine territory in the internet, in the maps. We should have this line, the red lines included, because the Treaty of Washington says all those islands ceded under the Treaty of Washington are as fully as if they had been expressly included within those lines. How do you graphically show that? You cannot move the islands inside the Treaty of Paris line. So you have to draw another line here. And that is the way we should present our territory to the world. We should have those lines enclosed, the Spratlys and Scarborough Shoal, because that is the Treaty of Washington. And now this is the map on the right, is the draft map of Namria. Namria is about to issue this map. Unfortunately, in the legend, they state the Treaty of Paris, and then they jump to the Treaty of 1930. They missed the Treaty of Washington. So I told them, you have to include the Treaty of Washington, because how do you now account for these lines? How do you account for Scarborough Shoal? The world will again be misled. So I hope they will change it. I've already flagged them on this. Now, in 1930, I mentioned there was a treaty with the British. There is a whereas clause in the treaty. It says, what is the Philippine Archipelago? Whereas the Philippine Archipelago is a territory acquired by the US from Spain in the Treaty of Washington of December 1898, as amended by the Treaty of Washington of November 7, 1900. So there is a definition of the Philippine Archipelago in this treaty with the British, demarcating the boundary line between British North Borneo and Southern Philippines. So Malaysia is bound by this because Malaysia succeeded UK in Sabah, in North Borneo. So Malaysia is bound by this treaty. Malaysia cannot get out of this treaty because the UK acknowledged that Philippine territory is governed by two treaties, the Treaty of Paris of 1898 and the Treaty of Washington. And in the Treaty of Washington, the entire Spratlys was part of Philippine territory. So Malaysia will have to honor. Malaysia, as successor of UK, is bound. How about the French? The Vietnamese are claiming the Spratlys as successor of France. Well, that's wrong because France did not claim it on behalf of Vietnam. And when Vietnam kept on saying that we succeeded France, France came out with a public statement, a note verbal. France said, beyond doubt, the Spratlys belong to the French Union, not Vietnam. They stated it clearly. You're claiming that you succeeded us? No, we did not claim it for you. We claimed it for ourselves. So that is the defect of the claim of Vietnam. They cannot really win against us. Now, China did not participate in the arbitration at The Hague. China said, we are not participating, but this is our position paper. And in that position paper, China reiterated, Philippine territory is governed by the three treaties. They even quoted the 1935 Constitution. They said, we are not participating, but this is our position paper. Philippine territory is regulated by three treaties, the Treaty of Paris of 1898, Treaty of Washington of 1900, the Treaty with the British 1930. And Scarborough Shoal and the Spratlys are outside. They are bound by this. This is called in law a judicial admission. The highest form of admission is if you admit in court. And they cannot get out of this. They already admitted that Philippine territory is governed by three treaties. They included the Treaty of Washington, but they did not read the text of the treaty. They relied on our legal luminaries to explain that only the islands within the treaty lines are part of Philippine territory, which is wrong. So we should probably thank our legal luminaries for misleading the Chinese and making this admission. They cannot get out of this admission. So to answer the question, what are the islands of the Philippine Archipelago? We refer to the 734 Murillo Velarde map, the 1808 map, and finally to the Holy Grail. I've been hunting for this map for quite a while. I still couldn't find it. 1875 Carta General del Archipelago Filipino. So what is the conclusion? We must challenge China, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, Indonesia, and Brunei. Okay. Submit the territorial dispute to voluntary arbitration because the UN Charter says all dispute between states must be settled by peaceful means, by negotiation, mediation, and finally by arbitration. We have talked to them for the longest time. We cannot come to an agreement, so it's time to submit it to arbitration. And if they do not agree to submit it to arbitration, we will bring the matter to the court of world opinion. We will explain this to the world. These are our evidences that we have sovereignty over Scarborough Shoal and the Spratlys. China, put your evidences in this column. Vietnam, put your evidence. We have to bring it to the court of world opinion if they do not agree to submit this to voluntary arbitration. So I end my discussion here. Thank you for your patience and kind attention.
Thank you, Justice Carpio. And of course, I already see people jumping to fall in line for the first questions to be given. I'll call my good friend, the better looking next governor of the Rotary District, Louis Asioche, to give the first question.
Justice Carpio, thank you for your tireless advocacy on the West Philippine Sea. Tireless because I know that you have been going around in lecturing and speaking circuits trying to correct the narrative that is falsely being made not only by China but by your favorite opinion writer at the Manila Times. Your treatise on the Treaty of Washington is very, very enlightening. My question is this. You know for a fact that after we sent those Atenito contingent to Bajo de Masinloc, which otherwise known as Scarborough Shoal, China has declared that by June 15, it has directed its Coast Guard to apprehend anyone intruding into what they falsely claim as their territory. If that happens, and I know that we are going to send another contingent to give assistance to our fisher folk at Bajo de Masinloc, what do you think will happen, and what do you suggest should be done?
Well, thank you for that. If China will, if the Chinese Coast Guard will arrest and detain Filipino fishermen fishing in our EEZ, that gives us the opportunity to bring another arbitration case. We will go to the arbitral tribunal and say that this is our EEZ under your 2016 arbitral award. That is our EEZ. That means only Filipino fishermen can fish there, and China arrested our fishermen, preventing them from fishing in our own EEZ. I'm sure the tribunal will order China to desist and to release the arrested fishermen, and will order China not to prevent again our fishermen. We cannot lose that case. It's an open and shut case, and I just hope that China will do what they threatened to do, because then we can have another award on top of the 2016 award, and the world will always support us if we have an arbitral award. Because before the arbitral award of 2016, China said, we own it, and we said we own it, but there was no referee to say who is correct, who was correct. There was then a referee. The UNCLOS tribunal said it belongs to the Philippines. The Philippines has an EEZ. So that is the case now. We will now, China said that we have this law, and we can take them out, we can arrest them, but we will say, no, we have the arbitral award, and of course, the arbitral tribunal, because under UNCLOS, your domestic law must be compatible with UNCLOS. And you are given time to amend your law to be compatible with UNCLOS. That's why the tribunal will say, your law, your regulation is not compatible with UNCLOS. That will be the rule. So I think China made a mistake here, because China is saying that fishermen who will fish within the 10-dash line and foreign vessels that enter and exit the 10-dash line without our permission will be seized. They are violating our rules. Let them try to seizing U.S. warships. They cannot stop. So they cannot enforce that against US or UK or French warships. So I think that's an overreach by them. They can only bully small countries like us, but we can run to the arbitral tribunal. And once we have that ruling again, the world will rally behind that again. Just like they have just like in the case of the arbitral award of 2016, the world has rallied around it. But the requirement is we must assert it. It's only now that the world is rallying around the 2016 arbitral award, because during time Duterte, when that was issued, Duterte said that's just a scrap of paper. But now we are asserting it, and the world will, of course, follow the rule of law. Thank you.
Okay, I see Treasurer Manny. Tony Lopez.
Thank you, VP Howie. Justice Carpio, I echo the remarks made by our precious President Louis about how you've persevered and your fortitude in defending our country. I have two questions for you. Questions that I have a hard time reconciling. For many decades, I admired our participation in ASEAN. I felt we were neighbors, we were buddies, and there was a good future. But now, on this particular case of our islands, the sovereignty over islands, we don't seem to get the support. Understandably, for Myanmar, Laos, they were the newcomers into ASEAN. But for the old timers like Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, my question is, can you help me understand our role in ASEAN and how our co-members have reacted? That's my first question, sir, on ASEAN. The second one is a harder one to grapple, because for us to succeed, China has to fail somehow. But center in China, centric to everything, the Chinese Communist Party, which I think if they lose the case, it topples the CCP. I mean, they've been there for 70 years, they dictate, and they create things to make themselves stronger and more relevant to the people. So first on ASEAN, secondly, sir, your thoughts on the Chinese Communist. Sir.
For that, on ASEAN, of course, there's the principle. ASEAN cannot move without unanimity, without all the countries agreeing. And there are three countries there that will always side with China: Myanmar, Laos, and Cambodia. Why? Because they receive a lot of aid from China. They cannot go against China. Vietnam, Malaysia, Singapore, they have their own play. Vietnam, although it's prejudiced by the 10-dash line, they have a long border with China. So they were hemming and hawing whether to join us in the arbitration at The Hague. I talked to the ambassador several times, said, we are joining. Finally, he came back, we cannot join, but we will write a letter. So they did write a letter to the tribunal saying that we are supporting the arbitration case, but they did not participate because the Politburo of Vietnam is split. You have the pro-Chinese side and the anti-Chinese side. So to preserve unanimity, they just sent a letter. So Vietnam is in a special situation. Well, Cambodia, of course, gets its Cambodia, Laos, they are really indebted to China. But in the case of Malaysia, Malaysia has very strong economic relations with China. There are a lot of Chinese investors in Malaysia rather, and the Malaysians also have invested heavily in China. In China. Now, why is Malaysia quiet because they're getting the gas. Recently, a month ago, Anwar, the new Prime Minister of Malaysia, said, "Oh, we don't have a problem with China on the South China Sea because they are getting the gas." Even if they were told by China not to proceed, they proceeded. But once they got it, they kept quiet. They didn't want to displease China. I mean, they didn't want to aggravate because they were getting the gas already. Singapore is another thing, very close to China. They have a lot of investments in China, and China has a lot of investments. And the Singaporeans will always straddle, will stay where they can get benefit from both sides. And I told them, I was telling them, because I spoke before the recent conference, and I said, you know, you're a small country. You rely heavily on international to survive, to exist as a nation. You're surrounded by big countries, Indonesia and Malaysia. And small countries are protected by international law. So your national interest lies in seeing to it that the UN Charter is not revised, is not changed. Because the UN Charter, the basic principle of the UN Charter is all disputes between states must be settled by peaceful means, by negotiation, mediation, arbitration, and outlawing use of force or threat of force. So you have to preserve that. If China is able to grab our maritime zones and territories by threat of force, that will collapse. That fundamental principle of the UN will collapse. Already, that is under siege in Europe. Russia invaded Ukraine with use of actual force. That's why the entire UN General Assembly condemned it, except for 4 countries. Overwhelmingly condemned. Everybody knew that if Russia succeeds in annexing the territory of Ukraine, then that will be the end of the UN Charter. So I said, what is happening in Europe is also happening in the South China Sea. China is trying to overturn the fundamental principle of the UN by threat of force, not actual force. But the UN Charter says the threat of force or the use of force is outlawed. Both are outlawed. And China is using threat of force. Russia is using actual force. They are both trying to overturn. And I told the Singaporeans, if the UN Charter is gone, what is your protection? So, especially also the small island, Pacific Island countries, they have no defense at all. If there is no UNCLOS, there's no UN Charter, they will be gobbled up by China. So,
Sir, what about Indonesia?
well, Indonesia is respected by China because Indonesia has sufficient force. That's why Indonesia can burn the Chinese fishing vessels. And Indonesia is quiet now because they are getting the gas in Natuna. They're winning actually. Tayo, because Duterte refused to send our survey and drill ship to Reed Bank, we are losing. Because in this conflict in the South China Sea, the country that is able to get the gas, oil, and other mineral resources, the fish, wins. Even if China does not recognize our EEZ in the West Philippine Sea, as long as we can get the gas, we win. That's why Anwar said it correctly. He said, oh, we don't have a dispute with China because he's getting the gas. But China does not recognize the EEZ of Malaysia. But Anwar said, I don't have a problem with them because they're getting the gas. The bottom line is, can you get the gas, the oil, the fish, other mineral resources? It doesn't matter if China recognizes your EEZ or not, as long as you get the natural resources. Thank you.
Oh. Question on the CCP, Justice.
Okay. The problem in China is that there is a firewall. from grade school to college, all the Chinese are taught that they own the South China Sea since 2000 years ago. That is the only narrative that they know. So when I talk to them, they really sincerely believe they own the China Sea. Anything else? How do you break this? You cannot break it. My book cannot be read in China because there's a firewall. So, but there are about 100, before COVID, about 100 million Chinese going out as tourists. When they're abroad, they can access the internet. So that's the problem. The problem is the Chinese people have been led to believe, sincerely believe that they own the South China Sea, because that is what has been taught to them. So what do we do? Well, our strategy should be, we must be on one page. The Filipino people must be on one page. To win this battle, we must have a common narrative. We cannot be divided. We're fighting a giant and we cannot afford to be divided. So we must have a common narrative, and then we go to our neighbors, explain to them why we have why we have our EEZ, why we have sovereignty over this island, and we go to the rest of the world. And we will ask the rest of the world to help us convince the people of China. It will be difficult because of the firewall, but we have no choice. But we still have work to do to convince our own people, and then we go abroad. You know, when I started this, I read in the Harvard Law Review that the Philippines is the weakest case. And probably they said that since China is an old civilization, it must really be true that they own the South China Sea since 2000 years ago. When the arbitral ruling came out, it completely flipped. There's nobody now in US or in EU that believes that China owns the South China Sea. It's a joke. Nobody, even the Chinese scholars are ashamed to say that. But the Communist Party is something else. They still adhere to that. But we have a lot of work to do convincing our own people, convincing our neighbors and the rest of the world, because they will be the ones together with us to convince the rest of the people in China. But as long as we have the Western powers with us in the South China Sea, they jointly patrol with us, China cannot make the 9-10 line as its national boundary. Imagine if today US and the allies of US leave the South China Sea. The following day, tomorrow, the 10 line will become the national boundary of China automatically. There's no ASEAN country that can compete with China in terms of naval or military strength. So what is preventing China from making the 10 line as its national boundary is the US and its allies. And we have to make use of that. In the meantime, we have to strengthen our defenses and also explain to our neighbors, to Vietnam, Malaysia, and Indonesia, look, we cannot expect the US to remain here forever because, you know, the US was isolationist. They refused to participate in World War I, and they were the last to enter World War II. What if that happens again? The people of the US might turn isolationist. That means they will leave the South China Sea. For them, it's a burden. It's spending too much. So we have to prepare for that day. The US will not be around forever. We have to prepare for that day. And the only way to prepare that is to strengthen our own Navy, Air Force, with anti-ship missiles, and then cooperate with other ASEAN states. Because if China and Russia succeeds in overturning the existing legal order, how do you protect yourself? How do you protect your maritime zones? You have to spend tremendously buying warships, warplanes, missiles. Money that you need for education, for social services will have to be diverted because the existence of the state is primordial. It will be a terrible world. So we have to prepare for that day. But at the same time, we have to strengthen our alliances and hope for the best that the US will not withdraw. But we must be prepared for a withdrawal in any event. Thank you.
Okay, so I have two questions here, but just to manage the time, no? One from Joy, then Bing, and then siguro I ask one question online, and then we can wrap it up. Question from Joy, and then President Bing, and then one online.
Justice Carpio, thank you very much for that very, very enlightening, factual presentation. It is the first time that I have seen the whole, something this holistic. My question is related to what you said and what the gentleman there said about the firewall that is imposed by a dictatorial government. Okay. And then one of the solutions and one of the problems coming up here is the enforcement of the the United Nations arbitrary rules or not. We do not know if China will submit to arbitration or even respect a decision that is contrary to them, because they have enough might and power and also control over the narrative. No? My question is this. Our ally is the US, but they are also going through the same process of fighting a negative narrative, the same one that encloses our country. Okay? The same one that we are in. The Philippines was the patient zero for the disinformation. Elections of May 2022, and the US followed elections in November, May 6, oh, not 22, 2016. Okay. No, I'm getting nervous about what I have a apocalyptic vision that is happening. And I really hope and pray and work towards the breaking of that firewall wherever it is. And I think other countries are also doing that, because the problem of the control through media, social media, which is one way China controls its narrative, is right now getting bigger and bigger and hitting more and more countries. Okay, but we were the first. We were the first experimented on and successful. So just a comment.
Okay, so thank you for that comment, Joy. Siguro just ask the one online. So after your question, we can thank Justice Tony. We just have one online question, then we'll go to President Bing. But makes silang naman tong on Senate or any plans?
None at all.
None at the
No, none at all, because I will devote my remaining years to the defense of
China.
offered that to the Americans, Exxon, to Chevron, to Shell. So it's not a new thing. And that was the agreement that was signed in MOU. So I said, wow, this is the solution to the South China Sea problem. China has agreed to get 40%. We will get 60. And I'm sure the Vietnamese and the Malaysians will agree. And I asked them, said, wonderful, we're willing to sign the same thing. So I thought we were on the cusp of solving the South China Sea problem. But towards the end, there were 3 agreements to be signed. The MOU that was signed, the terms of reference implementing the MOU, and the third was the commercial agreement between Sinok and Forum Energy, whereas Sinok will be the subcontractor, because we already awarded the service contract to Forum Energy. That's a British company, but fully owned now by the group of Manny Pangilinan. Okay. At the last minute, China said, oh, we will sign the service contract. You remove this to the air, whatever Malaysia has, and they're displacing the Western companies. But they wanted, if we walk that far. But any further step, we fall into unconstitutionality. Yes.
A follow-up question, Justice. Since we're now going through a process presumably of a constitutional change, and if the obstacle that you're saying refers to the current constitution, if the constitutional change, if ever it will happen, will in fact include a specific proviso that says, except for this particular situation, we shall allow it. Would that be satisfactory, you think, to us?
Well, if you put it in the Constitution, but I do not know of any government that will survive that gives away our sovereign rights. That's the problem. No government can survive if they say we give our sovereign rights to China. Yeah, even if it's contained in, and first of all, the people will not ratify such a provision. And if even if people will ratify that, the people will still not accept. They will still vote out that government. It will, maybe one country might, but that's against your interest. I mean, international law says you have a 200 nautical mile EEZ, ipso facto, ab initio. You don't even have to pass a law. The Congress says every state, coastal state, has an inherent right to a 200 nautical mile EEZ. That's international law. You want the people to put in the Constitution that you are waiving that. You can waive that. I don't think, I will be the first to campaign against that. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you again, Justice Tony. If you just want to talk maybe on the sidelines, you can have extra questions. But for now, for the lack of time, maybe may we call on our President, President Ming, for the remarks.
Again, thank you very much, Justice Carpio, for joining us this lunchtime. And we would like to share with you your own well, we have this particular memento that I think is within the exclusive economic rights of the Philippines, which is a reef bud in Narvacan, Ilocos Sur. Malapit na sa atin na siguro yun, no? Anyway, this particular plaque, Justice, will be attached to a reef bud that goes into the sea. And it's meant to provide the environmental, conservation of our reef. So with that, your name will there be forever, even if it's not in the Constitution. Okay, and then together with that would be a bottle of wine, as you enjoy reading our very thick book. 55 years. Kulang pa yan, Justice. We're now on our 58th year. Maraming salamat ulit, Justice.
Thank you. Ay, picture.
With that, maybe we can adjourn the meeting already. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Okay, picture.
May raffle tayo, no? May raffle ba?
Yes, sir. Okay, raffle ha. Presence required, raffle. O, raffle na natin. Game. Habang nagpipicture, raffle na natin.
Thank you. I go all around, but I will see computer. Yeah.
Okay, Derek Tan. Derek, are you still here?
So walang raffle.
Ayun, si Derek. Derek's here eh.
Derek left already.
Derek left, sorry. Okay, so another one. Ayan si Glenn. Oh, Glenn, congratulations Glenn Gatuslaw for your Dowell, ano ba yan? Shaker? Ano yan? Blender. Dowell blender. Okay, thank you again to everybody. Good afternoon.